All right, folks, if you could start wandering towards your seats, we will get this underway and get you to lunch. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Once again, Menhaden seems to be standing between you and a meal. So we don't have a lot on the agenda, so hopefully this will go fairly quickly, but we do have some business we need to conduct. First item, and this is the Menhaden board. Welcome. I'm Mel Bell, the chair. First item is approval of the agenda. Any desired modifications to the agenda? I don't see any hands, so the agenda will stand approved by consensus. Next would be approval of the proceedings from the November 9th, 2022 meeting. Any edits necessary to the minutes from the last meeting? I don't see any hands, so then the proceedings will stand approved by consensus. That takes us to public comment. This will be public comment for items not on the agenda. Are there any individuals in the room here that would like to make public comment? Don't see any hands, don't see anybody running up this way. All right, so then we'll move to the web-based comments. Okay, we have Phil Zalzek online. Phil, if you would like to take 3 minutes to make a comment, we would receive those now. Thank you. You with us, Phil?
Phil, we can't hear you on our end. You are unmuted, so it seems like it might be your microphone. And we still don't hear you, Phil.
Okay, in the interest of time, Phil, I know we have your written comments. So in the interest of time here, we're going to go ahead and move along. But I would point out we do have written comments that have been submitted by Phil. Okay. Then that takes us to the first item that we need to discuss as far as where we need some board action. And James will brief us on that. And this would be considered state implementation plans for Addendum 1 to Amendment 3. Go ahead, James.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a very quick summary of the plan review team's comments on the state implementation plan. All right, next slide, please. So as a quick recap, Addendum 1 was approved at the annual meeting in November last year. The board set a deadline for implementation plans to be submitted by January 1st, when quota allocations also took effect, and then with full implementation of the management measures in the addendum by May 1st of this year. The PRT met to review the plans and developed just a few recommendations. Next slide, please. Overall, the PRT is recommending the approval of all state implementation plans after finding that they are consistent with the FMP for the May 1st deadline. There were a couple of further recommendations the PRT just wanted to make a quick note of. In Maryland and Delaware, regulatory language does not include a list of permitted gear because the gear types that are already used within the state already conform to the incidental catch and small-scale fisheries provision. So the PRT is recommending adding language either through the regulatory or public notice process, if that's possible. It lists the permitted gears or defers to the FMP to preclude the remote possibility of new gears being introduced. Additionally, the plans for Pennsylvania, South Carolina, and Georgia are sufficient while they don't have a directed fishery. But should one develop, the PRT would recommend they develop new plans similarly to the agreement when Amendment 3 was implemented. Next slide, please. And that is all I have. Are there any questions? I can take them.
Any questions? Yes, John Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not a question. I just wanted to emphasize again that our gear are listed under state law. That's why they're not in the regulations. So we do have a list of permitted gear under our state code. So I could supply that to the PRT.
All right, thanks, John. Yes, Nicola.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have one question about Virginia's proposed regulations where they're adopting the 75.21% allocation. It didn't appear to me that that took into consideration the 1% that's coming off the top for episodic events set aside, nor would it allow you to receive redistributed quota or quota transfers, but perhaps that's elsewhere in your language.
That was in that we've always put our allocation percentage into our regulation. Shanna wrote it, so I'd probably ask her to respond to that one.
Sorry, tag team in. Yes, Nicole, the rest of that is actually in our regulation. So that section that specifically pertains to allocations further down also has an option that talks about the 1% set aside for the EESA, and then what happens if that 1% is reallocated to the state. So all that's already outlined, and I'm happy to provide that language if you want to see it.
Nope, just thanks for the clarification.
All right, great. Any other questions or discussion at this point? Yes, Lynn.
Mr. Chair, if you're ready, I would make a motion.
Yes, ma'am, that would be great.
I would move to approve state implementation plans for Atlantic Menhaden. If there's one written, there's an addendum number in there somewhere.
Okay, yeah, Marty.
Just a second.
Okay, gotcha. Did we have that, or are we going to put it up there? Yeah. Hang on one sec. Doing good. Moving along. Okay, there it is before you. I will let me read it, and then. So the amendment is to move to approve state implementation plans for Addendum 1 to Amendment 3. Motion was by Ms. Figley, seconded by Marty Gary. Yes, right? Oh, okay. Any discussion of the motion? Any opposition to the motion? Seeing none, then the motion carries. Thank you. It carries without opposition. Sorry, just clarification. Thank you. And we're moving pretty quick. And queue up the next. We next have another presentation by James.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll get started and jump right in. So as I mentioned in the last presentation at the annual meeting last November, the board approved Addendum 1 to Amendment 3, which changed the commercial allocations, including updating the time frame used to allocate the remaining TAC after the fixed minimums from 2009 to 2011 to 2018, 19, and 2021. However, Addendum 1 inadvertently did not include text to amend the time period used to redistribute relinquished quota. Therefore, staff has drafted a technical addendum to correct the error, which was supplied in supplemental materials. Next slide, please. So specifically, Amendment 3, Section 4.3.2 includes the following, quote, any quota that is relinquished by a state will be redistributed to the other jurisdictions, i.e. those which have not relinquished quota, based on landings from 2009 to 2011. Although based on the motion that was approved to establish the redistribution of relinquished quota at the November 2017 board meeting, which contained, quote, any quota that is relinquished by a state is redistributed to the other jurisdictions based on historic landings from the time period selected by the board in this amendment, end quote. It was the board's intention for relinquished quota to be redistributed according to the same time frame as the quota allocation. Next slide, please. So therefore, if approved, the draft technical addendum will replace the third paragraph in section 3.1.2 in addendum 1 with the paragraph on the slide. The only change to that paragraph is the last sentence where it states that, quote, any quota that is relinquished by a state will be redistributed to the other jurisdictions, i.e. those which have not relinquished quota, based on landings from 2018, 2019, and 2021, end quote. Next slide, please. So if approved, the board will need to determine an implementation timeframe and whether or not to implement for the 2023 or 2024 fishing year. If some states have already finalized their 2023 quota and do not have the ability to change it, then it may not be possible to implement for this year. For 2023, Delaware has relinquished 1 million pounds. So this table on the slide shows a comparison of how the 2023 quota allocations would change from the current redistribution to the new redistribution if the board approved the technical addendum and implemented it for this year, 2023. Next slide, please. With that, the board actions to consider today are the approval of the technical addendum and the timeline for implementation. Next slide, please. And I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, so this is a technical addendum to deal with basically an accounting issue that we need to deal with. So questions? And you have the, not that long, the addendum 1. It's a technical addendum 1 to addendum 1 to the amendment 3 of the plan. So it's in your supplemental materials. Questions, discussion? Yes, Chris.
Yes, I don't have a question necessarily, but to move things along, I'd be willing to make a motion.
Okay, that'd be fine.
So I move to approve the technical addendum 1 to addendum 1 and have the measures become effective for the 2023 fishing year.
All right, second by Nicola Meserve. Discussion. And again, specifically for 2023 right here. Okay, so any further discussion, any questions? Everybody understand how this is going to work? Y'all must be hungry. Okay, yes, Tony.
So just a quick clarification, all states would be able to accept this change in the quota for this year. That is really the question we are asking.
Yeah, will this work? Will this work for all of y'all? I don't see any problems with that. Okay, so I'll just read it in the record. Move to approve technical addendum 1 to addendum 1 and have the measures become effective for the 2023 fishing year. Motion by Mr. Kern, second by Ms. Meserve. We've had discussion. Any further discussion? Any objection to the motion? Okay, I see no hands, so the motion is approved by consensus with no objection. Thank you. Well, y'all must be hungry. Okay. That's the 2 items. Did you want to mention the?
One reminder.
Yeah, go ahead. James got a reminder here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just quick note as a reminder to the board. I've sent out recently a memo for nominations to the Stock Assessment Subcommittee for the 2025 Menhaden Benchmark Assessment. Those nominations are due by February 10th, and then we'll get those approvals sorted after that. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Just to count, we've got a few minutes, did great. We had a little technical difficulty perhaps in public comment, but right now I think we actually have an individual on that will hopefully work. We can have 3 minutes of public comment. That's Tom Lilly. And I don't know if Phil's still with us or not, but if Tom is on board and would like to comment, 3 minutes would be okay.
Tom, you just need to unmute yourself. Tom, really, you are still self-muted, so you just need to press that microphone button to unmute yourself to give your public comment.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Well, we do have written comment from Tom and written comment from Phil, and it's, fairly extensive, so I would encourage you to read that. Sorry for the technical issue there. All right. Yeah, Tom, can you get unmuted?
As a reminder, Tom, you click the microphone button to turn it from red to green.
All right, can you hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Yeah, we got
Oh,
you.
great. Okay, good morning, delegates, and thank you for accommodating a brief public comment here. I'm asking you delegates this morning to start a process to consider the ecological, social, and economic consequences of moving the Menhaden purse seine fishing from Virginia waters into the U.S. Atlantic zone, or leaving it as it is. Your ERP study said that when menhaden are overharvested, striped bass suffer the most and first and the most. So, isn't it gross overharvesting in Chesapeake Bay occurring when you have the following situation? In Maryland, 4 straight years of the worst young of the year production in history. In other words, a failure of the striped bass spawning stock. You're not really going to feel this until, a few years to come when all the older fish are killed off and we don't have anything to replace them. So in Virginia, the NOAA data shows the consequences of the overharvesting very clearly. Striped bass charters are down 60%. Striped bass trips by anglers are reduced 430,000 trips a year. 430,000 less trips by Virginians alone, families, friends, and children. Almost 500,000 trips lost. Striped bass angler spending is down $150 million a year in Virginia, according to the latest numbers. That's $150 million a year that Virginia small businesses are losing because of your inaction in not preventing the overharvesting of menhaden. There have been 2,000 jobs lost in just the striped bass fishery alone in Virginia. So I ask you, isn't this the time to start the process to consider the benefits and impacts of moving the purse seine fishing into the U.S. Atlantic? If these figures aren't enough to convince you to do that and to do it now, then I have to ask the rhetorical question, what in the heck are you waiting for? So please take action right now, today, to start this process. There are 1 million Marylanders and another 1 million Virginians hoping that you do that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tom. Yes.
Yep. Thank you for getting me on. Thank you very much.
No problem. Still with us or not? Okay. All right, so we have nobody else. Okay. All right. That concludes the agenda. Under other business, I have just one thought I'd like to run by the board. So, we've heard public comment. We just heard some. We've heard from meeting after meeting, kind of about the fishery of Virginia and that sort of thing. So I just thought maybe it would be instructive for the board. A lot of us may not be familiar with what all's going on in Virginia. Virginia's, obviously been doing things and having commission meetings and things. So maybe for the next meeting, we could ask Pat Gear of Virginia to maybe ahead of time just provide us with a little synopsis of, what all they've had going on down there, what's how they've been kind of engaged in the fishery, and just from their perspective of what's going on, because I couldn't really tell you exactly what all's going on in Virginia. But so I think that could be something where we just, like consensus, just ask the staff to work with Virginia, maybe provide us and assuming Virginia's okay with that, just maybe provide us some idea of what all's going on down there. Just give us an update. Pat, is that something that might work?
Yeah, we'd be glad to do it. I don't think it will be a little synopsis though. It's been very time consuming, but yeah, we'd be very happy to do it.
Yeah, I just think that would be helpful. It'd be helpful for me just to kind of get a picture of everything, and that would be for the next meeting. So if any objection to that, I don't think there would be. So, okay. Well, can we just ask direction to staff to kind of work with Virginia and receive that, and then it'd be ready for the next meeting, and then we can, kind of have a snapshot of what's going on in Virginia. Okay, cool. All right. If there are no other items to come before the Menhaden board, we will adjourn the Menhaden board early. All right.